In the vast expanse of the Pacific, the Second World War was not just a war of island hopping and carrier battles. It was a war of logistics. The Empire of Japan, an island nation, lived and died by its Maris, its merchant fleet. These lumbering, unglamorous ships were the lifeblood, carrying the oil, steel, rubber, and food necessary to fuel its vast war machine. To defeat Japan, this lifeline had to be cut. This was the primary, brutal, and lonely mission of the U.S. Navy's submarine force. Known as the Silent Service, these men, packed into steel tubes for months on end, would stalk the shipping lanes, waging a relentless, unseen war of attrition. But even in this elite service, one submarine and one commander would achieve a record so audacious, so aggressive, that the enemy simply refused to believe it was possible. She was the USS Tang, a Palau-class submarine, fresh from the Mare Island shipyard. She was a state-of-the-art predator, faster, tougher, and more deadly than any boat that had come before. But a submarine is just a piece of steel. Its true weapon is its commander. And the Tang's skipper was Commander Richard Dick O'Kane. O'Kane was not just any officer. He was a protégé, the former executive officer of the legendary Dudley Mush Morton, skipper of the USS Wahoo. O'Kane had learned from the master of submarine aggression. He was not a man who believed in caution. He was not a wait-and-see captain. He was an attack, attack, attack captain. A man who believed in surfacing in broad daylight, in taking insane risks, and in hunting the enemy with a relentless, almost joyful ferocity. The Tang's first war patrol, in January 1944, was not a shakedown cruise. O'Kane took his new boat and his green crew and immediately went on the offensive in the dangerous enemy-patrolled waters of the Caroline Islands. He was a demanding, meticulous, and brilliant teacher. He drilled his crew until their actions were second nature. In the boring silence of the deep, he taught them to be patient. And then he found his target. He stalked a convoy, slipped inside the destroyer screen, and fired his torpedoes. The crew felt the dull, satisfying thump of the explosions, followed by the terrifying, high-pitched ping of the escort's sonar. They were immediately pounded by depth charges, the steel hull groaning and popping, lights shattering. But they survived. They came home with 5 ships sunk, a stunning debut for a new boat and a new captain. The Tang's second patrol, in the spring of 1944, showed O'Kane's other side, his incredible, almost reckless bravery. The Tang was assigned to lifeguard duty near the heavily fortified Japanese superbase at Truk Atoll, a mission to rescue downed American airmen during a massive carrier strike. Most skippers would have stayed on the perimeter. O'Kane went inside the reef, in broad daylight, right under the noses of the Japanese shore batteries. He surfaced his submarine, a massive, vulnerable target, and maneuvered it like a speedboat, dodging bombs and coastal artillery shells to pick up pilots from the water. At one point, he was so close, he could clearly see the Japanese soldiers firing at him. By the end of the day, he had rescued 22 American airmen. The third patrol, in the summer of 1944, was when the legend truly began. O'Kane and the Tang were prowling the Yellow Sea. They found a massive, well-defended convoy. A normal submarine commander would have attacked from the side, at night, and fled. O'Kane, remembering the tactics he learned on the Wahoo, decided to do the unthinkable. He attacked in broad daylight, on the surface. He pushed the Tang's 4 diesel engines to their limit, running at 21 knots in plain sight, to race ahead of the convoy. The Japanese escorts were completely baffled. They mistook the charging American sub for one of their own destroyers. O'Kane then calmly turned the Tang, positioned himself directly in front of the lead ship, and fired a perfect spread of torpedoes. The result of this audacious daylight attack was a massacre. The convoy, its lead ships exploding, was thrown into total chaos. The Tang then stayed on the surface, its deck guns blazing, weaving between the sinking, burning ships to pick off new targets. The Japanese escorts were firing at each other, not sure who the enemy was or where they were. By the time the Tang finally submerged, it had sunk 10 ships, one of the most successful single patrols of the war. O'Kane had become one of the most successful skippers in the fleet, and the Tang was a marked vessel, a ghost that the Japanese were now desperately hunting. O'Kane was awarded his first Navy Cross. For its 4th patrol, in September 1944, the Tang was sent to the Formosa Strait. This was the Wolf's Lair, the most dangerous and most target-rich environment in the Pacific. It was the main choke point for all Japanese shipping from the East Indies to the home islands. It was also an operational nightmare. It was shallow, making it hard to dive deep. It was rumored to be heavily mined, and it was constantly patrolled by Japanese anti-submarine forces, who were now, finally, getting good at their jobs. This was a wolf pack patrol, and O'Kane, true to form, immediately left the pack to operate alone. He was a lone wolf, and he was hunting. What happened next was, and still is, almost unbelievable. O'Kane, looking through the periscope, found a massive, heavily defended convoy. But as he was maneuvering to attack it, his radar operator reported a second convoy, just as large, approaching from the other direction. A normal captain would have picked one and let the other go. O'Kane saw an opportunity. In a feat of brilliant, almost insane calculation, he decided to attack both. He positioned the Tang on the surface, in the dark, between the two convoys. He fired his bow torpedo tubes at the ships in one convoy, then screamed for a hard turn and fired his stern torpedo tubes at the ships in the other. The sea erupted. The Tang returned to Pearl Harbor, its torpedo racks empty, its crew exhausted, and its battle flag covered in new kills. The standard procedure was a long refit and a rest for the crew. But the war was at a fever pitch. The Tang was given a boring 10-day refit, just enough time to refuel, rearm, and repaint, and was sent right back out to the same spot, the Formosa Strait. O'Kane was now a ghost, a demon in the eyes of the Japanese. On October 23, 1944, he found another massive 5-ship convoy, escorted by 3 destroyers. O'Kane, with his trademark audacity, decided on a nighttime surface attack. He charged in, his radar giving him a perfect picture while the Japanese were blind. He fired a spread of torpedoes. 3 ships were hit. One, a transport, exploded in a massive fireball, illuminating the entire scene. The Tang wasn't done. The convoy escorts were now hunting him, firing wildly into the dark, their searchlights cutting the sky. O'Kane calmly swung the Tang around and fired his stern tubes, hitting one of the escorts. He was now in the middle of a burning, exploding convoy, a position of unbelievable danger. A crippled transport, its engines dead, tried to ram him. O'Kane was so close, he could hear the men shouting on the Japanese decks. He fired his last bow torpedoes at a tanker, which disintegrated. In one of the most furious and unbelievable surface actions of the war, Tang had single-handedly, in a matter of minutes, destroyed an entire convoy. The numbers were staggering. In just these 2 patrols in the Formosa Strait, O'Kane and the Tang had sunk an unbelievable number of ships. The Japanese High Command was in a total panic. They were rerouting all shipping. They were convinced a wolf pack of at least a dozen American submarines was operating in the strait. They could not, or would not, believe that this level of destruction, this perfect, systematic annihilation, was the work of one American submarine. The Tang had, in 9 months, sunk 33 ships. It was a record that may never be broken. The Japanese truly could not believe that one boat and one man could be this effective. The night was October 24th, 1944. The Tang had just completed its massacre of the last convoy. O'Kane had 2 torpedoes left, number 23 and number 24. He had spotted a final, crippled transport that was dead in the water. He wanted to finish the job. He maneuvered the Tang for the killing blow and fired his 23rd torpedo. It ran hot, straight, and true, hitting the transport. He then fired his 24th and final torpedo. The crew, on the bridge, watched the phosphorescent trail of the torpedo as it sped away. Then, something went horribly wrong. The torpedo breached the surface, porpoised, and then, inexplicably, made a hard, sharp left turn. It was a circular run. The torpedo was coming back. "All ahead emergency! Right full rudder!" O'Kane screamed into the hatch, trying to get the massive submarine to turn, to escape its own weapon. But it was too late. The Tang was too slow, the torpedo too fast. The submarine's own weapon, its 24th torpedo, slammed into its stern, just aft of the maneuvering room. The explosion was catastrophic. The Tang, which had survived hundreds of depth charges and the chaos of 11 convoys, was mortally wounded by its own hand. The stern was gone. The sub, its aft compartments flooding instantly, plunged 180 feet to the sea floor. The men in the forward rooms were alive, but trapped. O'Kane, on the bridge, was thrown into the water with 8 others. 9 men, including O'Kane, survived the initial sinking, floating in the dark, oily water. Below them, they could hear the sounds of their trapped comrades, using Momsen lungs, a primitive underwater breathing device, to try and escape from the forward torpedo room. Only a handful made it to the surface, most of them dead or dying. For hours, the 9 survivors tread water, listening to the death of their ship. As dawn broke, a Japanese destroyer, one of the escorts whose convoy they had just annihilated, spotted them. They were rescued, pulled from the water, beaten, and taken as prisoners of war. The Japanese, seeing the man who had caused them so much terror, were in disbelief that this was all it was. O'Kane and the few survivors endured horrific, brutal conditions as POWs, but they survived the war. When the Tang's record was finally confirmed by post-war Japanese records, the nation was stunned. The official tally was 24 ships, but the Joint Army-Navy Assessment Committee later revised this to 33, a staggering number. In just 9 months, the Tang had sunk more ships than any other American submarine in the entire war. Richard O'Kane was awarded the Medal of Honor. The Tang was not just a submarine, it was a legend, a testament to the unbelievable audacity of a skipper and a crew who took the fight to the enemy and, in 9 short months, changed the face of the Pacific War. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, hit the like button and subscribe for more daily content.